My name is David Krentzman. A little about myself. Well, how I got connected to the farm is part of my story. My wife and I, and at the time, three of our children, moved here from Wellesley in 1985, actually in February of 1985. And we had found Natick by accident. We had been living in Wellesley Lower Falls for 7 years in a house that we had found by accident that we could hardly afford when we moved in, but got better over time as work progressed for me. And we needed another room because we had had another child. Our youngest is Sam. We have actually 4 children now. At the time it was 2 girls, Jenny and Nellie, and then Sam was born. And we couldn't afford to move in Wellesley, which was fine because we didn't really like Wellesley very much. It never felt like home to us. And Carol, my wife, was in a play group with my second daughter, Nellie. And a woman there said, well, have you looked at Natick? And we thought, Natick? Wow, that's so far away. You know, it was 5 miles down Route 16. But for us, who had moved out progressively from Boston, it just seemed like a long way out. Well, in any event, she recommended a realtor, George Quigley, nice little guy, and he showed us a couple of houses in town. And at the time, there was snow everywhere. It was not like today where we don't get much snow. There was so much snow on the ground, we couldn't see our property. And there were actually only 2 houses to look at. One was unfinished, which was not workable, and the second one, which fit us perfectly, and we bought. So we moved in May of 1985, and sometime after that, we discovered the farm. Not exactly sure how we discovered the farm, but we lived literally over the hill as a crow flies, probably less than half a mile. So we started coming to the farm, and the kids loved it, we loved it, and we were homeschooling, so it actually fit our purposes perfectly. Well, the farm, physical acreage of the farm was the same, but the structures were completely different. Of course, we had the old barn, but the new greenhouse at the beginning of the property was not built. And there was, I think, a greenhouse attached to the barn at that time, but of course there was no solar on the barn. And all the other structures were just kind of not here. The pastures were different, set up differently. For instance, in the back here, where you're now growing something else, was all flowers. You know, honestly, I can't remember exactly, but I do know that the animals have been moved around, and it is quite a bit different the way it is set up today. And one other thing is that over in the front pasture, there's a number of maple trees, sugar maples, that had been planted in the last, my goodness, must be 30 some odd years. A couple of them, one is in memory of my father-in-law and the other my mother, and they're now big, and I'm not sure if they're able to be tapped yet, but they're growing.
That's amazing. That's like a permanent reminder here.
Permanent reminder. And how many years does it take before you can tap a maple tree?
We say 40.
Right. So they're going to be ready in another 10 to 20 years.
That's amazing.
I think the most valuable experience was for my children. As I said, we homeschooled our children up to high school. And it wasn't from a religious point of view, it wasn't from a point of view of hating school, although that Carol and I had different views than the traditional views about how good it was for kids to go to school. But the farm offered an opportunity for them to come here and take real responsibility for different things at the farm. And also to be with a whole mixture of ages. Because in school you're age segregated. We didn't like that so much. So our children here were working with adults and other people older than themselves, younger than themselves. We thought that type of socialization was very, very healthy for them, and they could look an adult in the eye and have a conversation, as opposed to the normal kids who won't look an adult in the eye and want to do anything but talk to an adult. My kids were very good with that. And as a matter of fact, my youngest Sophie, who's now 36, at age 4, she was leading sugaring tours. I mean, albeit it was probably pretty rudimentary, but she was leading people around the farm, telling them about the farm, telling them about the sugar shack. And one of your volunteers who may come and talk to you, Jay Ball, is a longtime volunteer. He and his wife Ricky have become kind of surrogate grandparents to my children. And how they met us was that Sophie was doing exactly that. She was kind of walking around giving a little tour at the sugar shack, and she, as a child, she's still very beautiful, but as a child she was stunning. And she was talking to Jay, and just chatting him up, and Jay is looking at this kid going, who is this child and who are his parents? Who are her parents? And that's how we met. One other thing I will say that I thought the farm was fabulous about, I mean, there's so many things, but because we homeschooled the children, they spent a lot of the growing up time down here, and with Linda's kids, as a matter of fact, Linda Simpkins' kids. But they were also did a lot with the arts. And my girls were dancing in an extension program afternoons up at Walnut Hill School for the Arts here in town. And I would come pick up, I remember particularly Jenny. She would have been mucking out chicken coop, and then she would change into her leotard with her bun on her head, and I'd pick her up. And I just thought that the kind of the juxtaposition of those two things was so good. It was so rounding for her, and that made a huge, that experience of volunteering here made a huge impression on my children, and today they still have just this tremendous warm spot in their heart for the farm. Well, George Ames, who used to live on our street, George was an older man, World War II veteran, and just the nicest guy. He was huge. He's a very, very large human being, and was just so gentle with the children and so great. And I first met him at the pancake breakfast, which used to be held at the Elliott Hall for many years. And he would be cooking there, Jay would be cooking with him, Rudham would be cooking with him, and a number of other guys whose names just escape me at this point. He was great. Rudham, of course, who was instrumental in so many ways to grow this farm. We got to know him quite well. And there were many other people, but right now they don't come necessarily back into mind. Yeah. I think he gives children from the schools who come out here an opportunity to see where their food comes from, as opposed to just a grocery store. And the summer programs and all the programs, again, to give the kids responsibility and an opportunity to work and to do something real. And kids today, they're involved with all sorts of things, sports and arts and the rest of it. But this type of experience in more or less a rural setting is foreign to most kids. When I was a child, there weren't as many houses. I grew up in southern Connecticut, but my town had a lot of horse farms. They had a lot of working farms, and we just had a lot of woods. And we played in the woods all the time. That's what we did. And that was a fabulous experience, a great opportunity to expand your imagination and to just discover things. And today, the kids are helicoptered. They're so programmed. They're so watched over that, and also they just don't have the environment that we had to be able to do those types of things. So coming to the farm gives them an opportunity to move around in a space that might be foreign in any other setting. Well, I've been cooking at the pancake breakfast. I can't even, I missed it this year. I was out of town. I was trying to think of when I started cooking at the breakfast. I'm not even sure because I don't know how long it's been at Memorial School,
A
but
long time.
certainly since it's been there, I've been cooking. I wanted to cook when it was at the Elliott Hall, but the old timers, you know, they had the grills and they were quite territorial about it. So I think I started once we got here. So that's always been a fun thing to do. We used to do Springfest here every spring, and I would drive the tractor for the hayride, which was really fun, and help out in different ways. I was on the advisory board for a number of years. Uh, those experiences were great, and of course now I've been coming not since COVID actually, but before COVID with my grandchildren, and we used when we were allowed to feed compost scraps to the pigs. We used to bring down tons of compost and go over and feed the piggies, and the kids absolutely adored it. And so between the chickens and the bunnies and the pigs and everything else here, I've been able to have my grandchildren experience the farm, not quite in the same way as my children did, because these kids are all actually either in school or in a different setting, but still to share, really the joyfulness of this place. Well, whoever's doing whatever they're doing here, and again, I've been out of the loop here for a while, the expansion of the farm programs and the farm itself and the caretaking has been excellent. And obviously the community values this place deeply. Look at the money that was raised to do the barn. So I'm hoping that the stewardship will continue in a meaningful way. I mean, that this has now been transferred into a place where the land can't be sold off is really good. I've been on town meeting for goodness, over 20 years. And it used to be things would come up about the farm. Now nothing, of course, which is great. And I think that my hope would be that generations will continue to have the opportunity to enjoy this place the same way that my children and my grandchildren are now enjoying it. It's very important that a place like this continue, because with lots of things that disappear from our collective memory, it's good to have this as part of what people can think about and remember, maybe what life was a little like at a simpler time, and have the freedom. I know the freedom to run around here. I really haven't been here in a long time, but I know my children and my grandchildren love to run around in the farm, go down to the pond, try to catch frogs or whatever they were doing here. And that stuff's really important for kids to be able to do. I think this is a really great thing to do to capture people's memories about the farm, because things change. They really do change, but the farm in a lot of ways has continued its mission. Hope it will continue to do that, and really appreciate what you're doing and everyone else who is involved at the farm.